Alright, both teams had a good start from the pace, and even worse from the terrible defense, especially in the screening actions, because there were constant breakdowns, so there was a rhythm established early. For some reason, there were a lot of messed up switches, or players not willing to concede it, or the big just not ready to show. So players were coming off screens clean, because there was no rock containment at all, and that's really how Jackie got going in her two-man game with Asia. That was a consistent theme for her the entire night, so I lost track of the amount of open looks or lanes she had, and it was no different for the Suns guards, because the Aces were just as bad. The only player that gets a pass was Asia, because even though she didn't always get a stop, at least she was consistent with her coverages, whether it was a show or veer, so I can't blame her for the Suns stretch from the last 6 minutes of the first to the first 6 minutes of the second, and that was their best chance to break the game open. They were all aggressive to get downhill, and their open looks from deep were falling, but then they got cold just as quick as they got hot, so that control didn't last very long, because from that point onward, they struggled to get that rhythm back. I don't think some of their looks were necessarily bad, because some of them were still the same ones they were hitting earlier, and they were still able to find some mismatches for their bigs inside when the Aces did switch, so I think it just came down to them settling from deep a little too much. They weren't getting downhill as much, so they weren't getting anything easy at the rim, and it just eventually led to them shooting themselves into a deficit in the third, but they were making it even worse on the other end by committing goofy fouls, because those unnecessary reach-ins kept putting the Aces at the line and slowing the game down. It took until the fourth before they could get their offense going again, and a lot of it was Sanaya, because she kept frying the Aces bigs once she forced a switch into SNRs, so the rock was basically in her hands all quarter. But it was just a little too late by then, because they were going against the clock, and they weren't getting stops, so it was just an exchange of buckets throughout. They continued to struggle containing Jackie on the clear side SNRs or DHOs, and Asia continued frying Tina Charles, because she was way too slow to keep up with Asia. That's just a tough matchup for her, because Asia operates in the mid-post, dirk, or elbows, so she's forced to slide her feet, and she's not able to just rely on her strength to bump on the low block the way she would against other players. But I wouldn't even say those were Asia's best looks, because the Aces were setting great screens for her throughout, and allowing her to get open for quick pulls, so she didn't have to create all of her shots on ones. Some of those were even coming off BOBs, because as a team, they were all crashing, so even when they weren't securing the O board, they were at least still keeping the possession alive by having it last touch a Suns player, and those second chance points were a big reason for them maintaining their lead. Obviously, Asia was responsible for the majority of them because of her glass work, either on the second jump, the rock bouncing right to her, or her being in a good position, and she got rewarded with a historic 30-20 performance for the first time in the W's history. Just watch the tape.